When you hear the names Amos and Andy, what do you think about?
Amos and Andy was a sitcom that followed the adventures of two black men who had moved from Chicago to New York. Originally broadcast as a radio program in 1928, the show was written and voiced by two white actors, Freeman Guzden and Charles Correll.
Alrighty, gentlemen, may I have a level now, please?
Okay, Mike.
Andy's right here like this. Andy say, who's scared? Me? Ha, ha, ha. A little. Mr. Gosden, may I have a check from you now, please, sir?
And then we have Amos. Amos about here, Mike. How's the balance on Amos? Then we've got Kingfish, Mike.
Kingfish down here. Don't forget we is all brothers in that great fraternity that missed it nice of the sea.
In 1951, Amos and Andy became a televised series, becoming one of the earliest black sitcoms to include an all-black cast. Although the TV series was immediately condemned by the NAACP, Amos and Andy helped to humanize the black experience and challenge racial ideologies of the time and the nuanced ways in which the black actors operated within the context of their time period.
In the courtroom scene, his name is Vincent Townsend.
Due to the lack of programming that included people of color, the black middle class feared these images posed a unique threat to the progress of African Americans and would be viewed as an authentic representation of blackness as opposed to acting.
Why, certainly.
Amos and Andy had been loved by both black and white audiences since the inception of the radio program. In fact, many black Americans refused to join the protest with the NAACP and continue to be fans of the show.
Oh, Amos and Andy?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, laughs, a lot of laughs.
Well, I remember my parents didn't like it. They thought it poked fun at black people a little bit too much. But I guess being a generation removed, I could see the humor in it.
If you call somebody Amos and Andy, it was a put down.
I go back a little before them. I remember them from radio. Very funny, very, very humorous.
A lot of response, good response.
While the majority of white Americans found the show to be enjoyable and often dismissed any racism in the program, it's important to understand the ways in which white America had been exposed to blackness in the media for decades. By the 20th century, blackface performances were so common that they became vital to the formation of American popular culture. The comedic depictions of African Americans in Amos and Andy were directly influenced by blackface performances and minstrel shows that subsequently shaped the images and implicit messages found in black sitcoms of the 1950s. While viewer interpretations lie in subjectivity, it's important to note that media culture has powerful manipulative effects. Cultural studies researchers have found that audiences interpret and read media in 3 different ways.
I don't think that it reflected the wrong image of black people. I think it was the fact that it was the only image of black people. And because that's all we had, then I think the NAACP was really trying to say we needed a balance. Instead of saying that, what they said was this show reflected our people in a negative image because other people see us and think that this is the only way we are.
Record must show that they paid the dues that made it possible for those who now play roles of much more dignity to have come forth. First of all, they proved that blacks could act. They proved that blacks could entertain. They showed the dynamism of the black mind. And by and large, I remember growing up as a kid watching Stephen Fetchit and watching Amos and Andy and Tim Moore. You know, black people had enough sense to appreciate them as funny people playing out roles. Their roles are so limited, we laughed at them and laughed at their roles. But after all, in the same period where all that was on radio and TV, out came Martin Luther King, out came Malcolm X, out came Adam Powell, out came Dr. Howard Thurman, Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, and so there was a tradition of our community of funny people. or who played even in these minstrel shows. But then there was another tradition. It did not dominate black life to the extent it has been projected to be. Even to this day, George, our struggle is for a struggle of balance to show the breadth and depth of the black experience.
The overwhelming popularity and significance of Amos and Andy is often overlooked, and the merits of Tim Moore and Alvin Childress allowed for comedians such as Red Fox and Bill Cosby to emulate their comedic wit and further their legacy. Amos and Andy served as a catalyst to re-examine values and morals that were often associated with race. By refusing to strictly reinforce racial ideologies, the show helped to fuel the conversations about black representation during the Civil Rights era, and ultimately served as pioneers in black sitcoms.